Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast, Into Miyazaki's Word. My name is Betty.
And I'm Avery.
Yes, so before we getting started, how was your spring break?
My spring break was good, but it was definitely not long enough. How was your spring break?
It was okay. Just staying here and doing work, and I got started on this movie just right after the break. So yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. I watched it too over the break. I watched it with my boyfriend, and we thought it was interesting. It's a lot more action packed than some of the other Ghibli films.
Yeah, I really enjoyed too, and I was very interested, like more than excited, because it was Ghibli first sci-fi movie among other like slice of life movies. So I
Yeah.
think it's very interesting to talk about that today. So yeah, before we moving to the main topic today, I just going to give you the title of the movie. We're talking about La Puta, Castle in the Sky, and I'm going to give Avery the spotlight to talk about the summary of the movie, but here's the spoiler alert that we're going to discuss and analyze a lot of like details from the movie, so it's hard to avoid spoiling. So if you want to watch the movie, we recommend you to just pause in there and watch the movie and come back to us later. Or if you don't mind at all, we can just jump right into it now.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So, this 1986 fantasy adventure film follows the young orphans, Sheeta and Pazu, as they evade Sheeta's kidnappers and attempt to uncover the truth about the mysterious floating city of Laputa. Along the way, they form unlikely alliances as they race to the castle of Laputa, where a crystal of mass destruction, or it has the potential for that, must be saved from falling into the wrong hands.
yeah, that's a cool summary.
It's a little dramatic, but I mean, it is kind of there's high stakes in the film.
Yeah.
So,
So before getting started, like how do you like the movie? Like how much do you like it?
I, when we were first watching it, I was really enjoying it. But looking back over my notes and kind of organizing my thoughts, I realized that maybe it didn't have as much of an impact on me as when I was watching it and enjoying it. Maybe just because, like you said, like the other films we've seen is a lot more slice of life, and there's a lot of action in here. There's a lot of like details. And so when I was going back over my notes, there was some stuff that I didn't even remember that I had written down. And so I don't know if that is kind of like negative of the movie. Maybe there's too much going on or something about it just didn't quite hold my attention because later on I was having trouble remembering it. Whereas it could have also just been because it was my first time watching it. But what about you?
I think that's fair because that what happened to me when I first watched it, and this is my second time, and I think I like it more after we watch it. Maybe because now I'm interested in AI, and now it's related to some robots in the movie, so that's why I focus more. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's fair when you feel that at the first time you watch this movie. Maybe in my opinion, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if I watched it a second time, I would have more to say. But I will say a film like Porco Rosso was also my first time watching it, and that one kept me pretty captivated. To be fair though, Castle in the Sky is a lot longer than Porco Rosso. Porco Rosso was maybe an hour, maybe an hour. Castle in the Sky was nearly 2 hours, I think.
Yeah, it's a very long movie.
Yeah.
So
And I don't know, compared to Howl's Moving Castle, which the only reason I'm comparing it to that is because lengthwise, they're more on par with each other. They're both about 2 hours. I just took more away and remembered more from Howl's Moving Castle versus this one. And I guess we'll discuss why exactly that is and, what you liked about it as well. So, yeah.
yeah. No, I think that's a very good comparison because I wonder too now when you brought that up. But I do enjoy House Moving Castle more.
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe because it's focused more on the romance side, and I'm a girl, so I like that more. But yeah, for this one, I just find it interesting because of the modernization in the
Yeah.
movie. So
This one gave me kind of a feel of a few different movies that I could think of. So, of course, I will preface that this one probably came before everything I'm just going to talk about. So I'm not saying that this movie ripped off the films I'm about to mention, but just that I see similar elements. So like, have you seen Disney? And this is like an older Disney movie, Atlantis. Have you seen that?
It sounds familiar, but I cannot recall.
So, Disney came out with I'm actually curious. I'll look up when it came out, but Disney came out with a movie. It was like The Secret World of Atlantis or something, and it just gives me very similar vibes. I think Atlantis came out after, but it follows this boy or young man named Michael Thatch, and he basically wants to go uncover Atlantis, the lost empire. And so along the way, he's going with this team of people that aren't in it for the right reasons. Because for the main character, he's all about the knowledge, the quest for knowledge. He wants to know about this ancient civilization. Whereas the other people, they're there for more material reasons. They want to conquer it and extract its resources. And that's exactly what we see in this film. So now that I looked it up, Atlantis, The Lost Empire came out in 2001. And so either way, it's just, I like it when I can draw comparisons between films like that. So it was kind of cool to see it here and also think about like which one did I feel handled the themes better. I will say in Castle in the Sky, we have more of an emphasis on the environment and nature, which we know is a Miyazaki special. So I would have to say I prefer Castle in the Sky. But we do get like a lot of similarities in this theme of greed and not respecting like ancient or whatever customs and just kind of prioritizing the wrong things, I would say. And also there's something about this film that is a little more kind of like Princess Mononoke, a little more adult, maybe because of the violence. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I feel like this movie focused a lot on building the villain characters rather than other neutral character we discussed before. Because for me, this one, I feel like it's the first time Miyazaki just make a true villain in his movie.
Absolutely.
Because for other villains, I still feel like I can empathize,
Yeah.
with them. But for
Yeah.
this one, I really hate that guy. But
So
yeah.
maybe we can jump right in. I know we usually start with world building, but I feel like the main part of the world building is when we get to the castle and the floating city, which is later in the movie. So maybe we could start by talking about the more villainous themes, which is I'm not sure how you categorized it, but it's kind of the violence or the human desire, I think is what you called it. So
Yeah.
what did you think about the villains being a little more one-dimensional? Did you think that was a good thing, or do you wish that they were more just developed, like Lady Eboshi from Princess Mononoke, for example?
Yeah. I think for this one, Miyazaki just make it like completely two things that very different from each other, because in Princess Mononoke, Lady Eboshi still have the reason to do that to the
Yeah.
forest. But for this one, it's just for Muska personal desire to dominate the world. So it's
Yeah.
not something very reasonable to like use the power to do that to everybody. So I don't feel like it's the right thing. Like it's completely wrong to me. So yeah.
To me, I agree. I think the villains here aren't as compelling in this. I think it makes the story for me not as memorable, which is maybe why I was having trouble recalling some stuff. Because Princess Mononoke, which I think might be one of my favorites so far, the thing about Lady Eboshi is that while she's making these decisions that we might disagree with, and we're kind of like, where are her morals? What is she doing? At the same time, we see this other side of her where she is a woman in a time period where gender very much does have constraints and matters, yet she's taken the initiative to have a leadership role and create this haven for kind of like outcasts, like the lepers and these women that don't fit like social roles at the time. So she kind of has like these good redeeming qualities. Muska? Is that what Muska?
Yeah, Muska.
No redeeming qualities at all. And so to me, I find it a little boring. I kind of want more complexity. He's just, but it's like you said, or it's like old Disney movies. Like the villains, they're just evil. There's no backstory. There's no complexity. They're just bad. That's it.
Is there any backstory? I think it does, because Muska, I think, is Sheeta's cousin.
Yeah, they're related somehow.
Yeah, because the family is divided into like two separate sides, one good and one bad. And I want to touch for that later when we discuss about the environment and industrialization.
Hmm.
But I feel like Miyazaki just make it like a reflection of how people want to do the bad thing to achieve what they really decide to do. And
Hmm.
Shita, for her, it just like I don't know. I don't know how to explain, but yeah, it just like hmm. I cannot find a word to summarize it for this part, but yeah, you can maybe you can move
It's
on
okay.
and
I
yeah.
mean, we can keep talking about the human desire. I don't know exactly what you wrote for that, but for me, I kind of saw these three themes. Some of them compete with each other, other ones go very much along with it. So we kind of have this violent aspect to the movie in which a lot of the characters choose to respond with violence. And Miyazaki does like to touch on themes of war and conflict, and I actually think this movie can be interpreted as pro pacifism uh, in certain contexts because we know that this isn't a war, but we still see certain violence that his more war themed movies carry. And so like the introduction, like our first introduction to the film, we get right into the plot, which is very different, I would say, from most Ghibli movies. It's not like, I feel like with Kiki's Delivery Service, we kind of see this like, swooping in, and we're world building and we're showing where she comes from, and it's just music. Or Ponyo's like that too. This one, no, it gets right into the action. So that was really striking to me. I really felt that was intentional. It's setting the tone that this is going to be a movie that doesn't pull punches in that way. Um, and also the scene where Sheeta is gonna strike him on the head with the bottle, and then it immediately cuts to a gun firing from the pirates. And so just kind of like this emphasis to me on the violence was something that was really striking because I just don't feel like we always see that in Ghibli films.
Yeah. No, the opening is very intense. Even though recall to Princess Mononoke when
Yeah,
they first fight the big
the bull.
boar,
Yeah.
yeah. It just more of the shooting scenes in the movie, and I think it's like what you said, it's intentional to do that, and I think it's open to show like how the villains in the movie also divide into always also divide into like two sides, because for me at first watching it I thought the pirate gangs are villains
Mhm.
and Muska obviously also villain, but
Mhm.
going on to the movie, we just know that Shita and Pazu, they gradually just become friends with those villains. So
Yeah.
it's not like completely villain. I call it temporary villain, but I don't know what you called for that
Yeah,
one.
no, absolutely. I mean, we can talk about the pirate gang in Dola for a second if you'd like, because I think that they provide a good contrast to gosh, I hate his name, Muska. Okay. It sounds like Mickey Mouse, Muska, Mickey Mouse, or he says something like that. I don't know. But anyways, so yeah, no, when we're first introduced to the pirates, we're like, oh, these are the bad guys, but they're kind of bad guys in the same way that Porco Rosso's sea pirates were bad guys, because they're bad, but they're very silly. You don't really take them seriously. Whereas Muska is very intimidating and cutthroat. Like I remember a time where he just yanked Shito by her braid. He's very violent and scary. You don't see any moment of lightheartedness with him. Whereas the pirates, they do kind of have this silliness, even though we know at first that they're supposed to be the villains. Um, I kind of wonder to what extent Dola, at least, so the main pirate, is she, we know that she's nicer than she pretends to be because we see that later. She opens up and she accepts Pazu to come with them, and then even at the very end when she's like very happy to see that they're alive, both of them, I kind of wonder if she feels a need to maybe act like more mean and aggressive because she's a woman in a leadership position. I don't know. I was wondering what you thought of that.
I think it's maybe, but for most of the reason, I just feel like she's like a strict mom.
A street mom.
Yeah, because I think the gang call her just mama. So
Mama.
I think it makes sense. She just like trying to be like very strict, very like I don't know what's the word. My
Gangster?
vocabulary.
Like gangster or something? Yeah.
Yeah, she very just um want to scare people
Yeah.
so she can just like control them easier, I think.
Yeah. And speaking of her family, I don't know if it was just me, but I felt like her sons or the pirates in general, really resembled the design of the American Curtis in Porco Rosso. Did you notice that?
No, I don't. I
No?
just
Okay. That's fine. Not all of them. I think it was mainly this guy to me. He looked like Curtis and I think he had a little mustache too. But
interesting.
yeah, no, I don't know. I just kind of saw that comparison because they both act like idiots, to be fair. Like the sons, they act dumb, and the way they try to kind of flirt with Cheetah, which I don't even know if we need to get into the age gap because it seemed suspicious, but
Yeah. No, for real.
yeah.
I did notice the way they just flirt with Shita, and I recall back to our discussion in Porco Rosso when we talk about age and love. So I did notice that one, but I didn't notice like his appearance until you brought it up now.
It's so odd. So it's the appearance for me, but also I agree, like the way they act, especially around Sheeta, who is who knows, maybe like 13 or 14. She looks pretty young to me. I'm assuming you watched it in the sub, right?
Yeah.
In the dub, Sheeta sounds like a 13, 14-year-old. She could be. Pazu sounds like a grown man. I do not know why they voice casted him that way because he does not sound like how he looks. Also, just to note, I'm pretty sure I'm right, but I think Sheeta's voice actress is the same as Kiki's for the dub. So that was kind of cool. She sounded like Kiki for me.
Yeah. Or maybe they are at the same age. So it's more interesting if it's happened. They're in the same age and the same voice actor just take over it. So yeah.
I'm like trying to check. I don't know if anyone's interested. You can look it up. We got it. We gotta get this ball moving. So, yeah. What did you have anything else like under your human desire for discussion?
For human desire,
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's not that I'm covered that much because I'm writing here like I want to focus on more about their purpose
Mhm.
for why they just approach Laputa.
Mhm.
And I divide into like two sections, like for the wealth, the money,
Mhm.
and the power. And
Yeah.
obviously, like the pirate gangs is more in the money side, for they just want to hunt for treasures, and they just avoid all of their ability to
Yeah.
kill anybody. And that's what I also put it under pacifism category because I feel like even though there's a lot of like violent scenes in the movie, but they don't actually like kill somebody except for
Yeah.
the scene
Muska.
Muska.
He's the only one that I think kills anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really striking. So, yeah, we do see these kind of like intertwined themes of money, greed, and power, and it's kind of like painting this society that's a little misguided. And we get this idea all along that it might be because of industrialization, which I know you have a theme for that. That like our morals and our what we value in society has kind of shifted to maybe not the best things. But I feel like Miyazaki does a good job at portraying it as a complex issue because ultimately we do live in a society where money kind of rules everything and you need money to survive. And so I don't know if you picked up on this or remember this, but in the very beginning, we have the mines and all the miners. So I remember that they mentioned something about like that they're looking for silver and that they're having some sort of financial insecurity, like they're facing starvation. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I it's just complex. The reason I'm bringing that up is because we have Muska, who's he wants the power, and then the military they want the money, and they're going to accomplish it through any means, even if it's unethical. Whereas the pirates they want to accomplish it, but maybe through more reasonable means that aren't as evil intended. And then we have the actual townspeople where they're starving and they're doing what they can to try to get silver. So I just think it's an interesting like build on this concept of money. You can want money, you can desire it because you do need it for survival, but you shouldn't let it surpass into greed. Don't let that control you, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fair. And for Muska point of view, I don't see any point like he really obsessed of the money, but just the power. So I think that one really interesting too is completely contrast to the other villain.
Yeah.
because everything he wanted just like the power to dominate the world. And there's a
Yeah.
scene he just looked at his team and just took for granted for that when they were happy when they found some jewelries.
Oh, yeah.
He just called them just idiot. You don't know anything. You need to look for something like bigger.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking at my notes that I put for Muska. He's such an interesting guy because considering the fact that, he, like you said, is more involved in wanting the privilege and the power of like being the king of this city. Like he really likes that idea. He still references money. He's very much aware of its existence and of its I guess temptation. Cause I don't know if you remember, but when he tries to pay Patsu to leave, whenever they are kidnapped again the second time, and he pays Patsu to leave. He's like, Sheeta's coming with me. She doesn't want to be with you. Like, just take these coins and leave. But so clearly he knows that most of society is run by money, but he doesn't know that Patsu isn't like that. Patsu isn't motivated by money. He's motivated by his compassion for others and desire to clear his father's name, which we'll talk about later, I'm sure. And I think I think he calls it like, oh, all I got were these miserable coins. I wanted Laputa, or he says something pitiful like that.
Yeah, for real, that's fair. And I think it's very interesting because I really want to know more about his background, like you mentioned earlier,
Patsus or Muska?
Muska.
Muska. Yeah.
Because I don't know why he only focused a lot on just the power instead of order humans desire thing
Mhm.
in this society during that time. But I wonder because in the original position, he's still under somebody else control, right?
The general, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know because of that, he just want to get out of that situation. So that's why when he realized that he has a royal
Mhm.
blood,
Yeah.
like he's also I would say the prince of Laputa.
Yeah.
So he feel like it's maybe an offense for him, so that he has to do something to like become the king of the world.
It's interesting because I feel if they would have given him more background and more information as to why he's motivated by power and wants power, it would have added some complexity and not made him such a flat villain. Because to me, he's just such a like cartoon Disney villain, like Maleficent or something. Like there's no redeeming qualities. We don't know if his motivations are complex at all. They just seem evil. But I could see what you're saying, that maybe it does have to do kind of with this heritage thing, like, oh, how far our people have fallen, we were supposed to be royalty. I could totally see that. But at the same time, compared to Sheeta, he's totally like annihilated himself from the culture. He wants the prestige, he wants the power to rule over it, but he's not knowledgeable of the culture or the heritage of this city. And so I think that's kind of one of the big issues. And also she says to him, like, you can't be a king without compassion or something like that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I love that quote. That was cute.
Okay, I think we can move on. So, what else do you want to touch on?
Well, I actually had like one more thing
Okay,
for
yeah,
that
no, go ahead.
category. So, we kind of briefly touched on it, but we didn't really describe like when the army first arrives to Laputa. I just thought it was so like, oh, like so comical that immediately they just start ruining things immediately. Like the difference between when Shito and Pazu arrive and they're kind of like, whoa, and taking in everything and looking at the life and interacting with it and just admiring it, versus when the government arrive, they just start destroying everything and looting immediately. I just saw that as like a big contrast once again, and kind of like motivations and just the greed and the pride of humanity. Why, I don't know. Can you just imagine? Can you imagine like finding this mysterious like floating island? You'd want to explore it, right? You'd be wondering at all the wildlife and the history and wondering how, like Shida and Pazu wondered this, how this great civilization fell. The government shows up. What do they want? The money. Like that's all they care about immediately.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because when you mentioned that, I just thinking about the concept of colonization.
Mhm.
So I don't know if it's feel the same when you just already plan to colonize that country or places. So you just come there and just immediately like commit what you want to do.
Yeah.
and for their purpose, they want to go there for the treasures
Yeah.
at first, and then the sources. I think some kind of the stone. I lost the name here, but we're gonna touch
The
about that later.
Ethereum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they just immediately are thinking about how can we exploit this
Mm-hmm.
resources rather than like Pazu and Shita who have a lot more, well, Pazu especially because he's not even connected to Laputa by culture or heritage or anything. He just has genuine curiosity and amazement for this place. And then Shita has like that personal like heritage connection. So it's just interesting. I think it's also kind of telling us how we should interact with like these articles of the past in a respectful manner.
Yeah.
But yeah, but we
Yeah, I
can move
think
on
that's fair.
to whatever topic you want.
So I want to touch on maybe environment and industrialization is a hard word, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think we touch a lot of that, like the purpose why people come into Labuta and just like exploit it. So
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting if we touch on that right now. So for me, like I think we both know that this one reflects a lot on the environment and how human activities just like impact the environment.
Yeah.
So I just put it in here. It's a metaphor reflects the. Personally, I think it's reflects the overexploitation of the natural resources
Hmm.
because it's very interesting when I research and I found it's based on a real event in the past. So it was inspired by the 1984 miners' strike in Wales.
Oh. Hmm.
So for those who don't know about the event, it was just one of the bitterest industrial disputes in Britain,
Hmm.
and I think it's very interesting to brought that up because it's implied very well in the movie. So it happened in March 1st, my birthday. I just realized
Oh.
it's on March 1st, 1984. The National Coal Board announced to close like 20 coal mines, leading to the loss of like 20,000 jobs.
Hmm.
So people become like unemployed
Yeah.
during that time because coal is the main natural resources during
Hmm.
that time. So people fought for it, of course, and it was known for a year-long strike. And this event completely like, changed the political, economic, and social history of Wales forever. So
Hmm.
it described very well like how Laputa just become being exploited by these people. And
Hmm.
at the very end of the movie, it completely changed the thing when Shita just put out the spell of destruction.
Hmm.
But we can
Yeah.
touch on that more later.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
That was a good metaphor. I like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I actually didn't write too much about industrialization, I guess, because I kind of grouped it in with the greed and all of that. But I entirely do see that, and we do obviously get the opposite of the bad guys' priorities, which is more of the eco-friendly environmental lens that we really love to get from Miyazaki. I feel like a character we could talk about that really embodies this is the old man that lives in the caves, Uncle Palme?
Uncle
Palmy?
Palm.
Oh,
Yeah, I
it has
think
an
just
E on
Palm.
it. Uncle Palm. Yeah, and so for those who may not remember if you haven't seen this in a while, when I think it's after the big battle on the train tracks, Sita and Pazu end up underground and they're just kind of like exploring, and then they run into like this old man that looks like he's been down there for years and hasn't showered. It's kind of funny. Um but he ends up giving them some really good wisdom and talks a lot about kind of like having harmony with the environment. I really liked his character. What did you think?
I really like that too because I feel like this guy taught me a lot about the life underground because
Yeah.
I think it's a very new job for me when I watched this one in
Hmm.
Ghibli. That I feel like Miyazaki just cover all the landscape in this world. He go up
Yeah.
to the sky, under the sea, and now under the ground.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and I love how he talk about how the rock is are stirring.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
whenever Laputa is above. And also he says the rocks speak in a small voice, and I
yeah,
like that because I think in I was gonna say it's kind of ironic that we often don't just sit in silence enough, especially in nature. And it's ironic because we're sitting here talking indoors. But that I don't know. I kind of what he said resonated with me that maybe we should spend more time just like in nature, being quiet and like listening. Because we don't really do that enough, I don't think anymore. But we get some other good quotes from here. He says things like, "The answers lie inside of these rocks," and how mankind had forgotten how to mine Ethereum. So I found that interesting. And then probably my favorite quote from him was that people need to remember that we come from the earth, and to the earth we must return.
Yeah, I love that quote too. I have it down here, but yeah.
Absolutely. And I believe he says, because I think the children tell him about Muska and everything that's going on. And he says, well, that power that belongs to the earth, and that if you try to use it for selfish reasons, that it's not going to end well. And him saying that directly corresponds with when Sheeta is captured. When they're in the castle and it catches on fire, that scene, and she like whispered a spell, and then remember he tried to grab the stone from her and it shocked him. That was entirely proven the Uncle Pom's point right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting when you brought that up. I like that.
Yeah. And then I think most of what we see with the environment is probably on Laputa itself. So what did you think of like the design of the city and the environment there?
Uh-huh. So for Laputa, I put it down here because I feel like it divide into like two section as well.
Mhm.
It reflect like two side for more about a natural care perspective and more about the industrial focus perspective. So for the natural perspective, obviously the greenhouse.
Yeah.
I really love that one with a lot of like plants, flowers, and wild animals. There's one scene I wonder why that kind of creatures look like Pokemon.
Oh, the little one and it jumps on the
Yeah.
giant's shoulder. Actually, I have a picture right here. This guy.
Oh my god. I don't know
Can
why,
the
but
camera see?
it looked like some creature in Pokemon, and it just paused me for a little bit. But
Reminds me of Eevee and Pikachu if they combined.
yeah,
Yeah.
for real. But never mind. Back to the topic. So, I just want to focus like how this section is more focused on the environment, of
Mhm.
course. So at the very beginning of, not the very beginning, at the very first time, Pazu and Shita just come to Labuta,
Mhm.
their plane just land on the nest of the kind of bird, and the robot just approached them, but it contracts to the robot we know at the tower.
Mhm.
That robot is not very like aggressive and attack them. They just want to move the plane to save the bird. And I think it's very interesting to compare to that robot.
Absolutely.
Because later on, sorry, I touched something.
It's okay.
Yeah, because later on, when we compare to the robots in under the industrial focus perspective, I feel like it's focused more on how it become a weapons to fight.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so besides of that, in the natural care perspective, I noticed the life under the pond when Sheeta look at it.
Yeah. It's
I
kind of like a Ponyo moment.
Yeah, that's what I noticed too. I feel like it is a section where Labuta people just preserve the ancient legacy or civilization or animals in
Mhm.
the past, and they just be there.
I 100% agree, and I had the same impression. Like Laputa is so lush and green, and it's magical, and it's full of diverse and obviously very unique life. And just like when they wake up in the field of flowers, like it's just very beautiful. I actually thought it was kind of interesting the way that they are unconscious and wake up in that field because it seems almost heavenly, and they're in the sky. I don't know if there was supposed to be some sort of interpretation we can make from that, but I don't know. Maybe it's just kind of like a rebirth in their thought because they're actually like seeing Laputa now. Because originally for Pazu, Laputa was just to like avenge his father, and rewrite his honor and his name. And then for Cheetah, I mean, she really didn't want much to do with Laputa. She just wanted the bad guys to stop chasing her. And so I feel like in this moment, it's to me, I could see it kind of as a like rebirth in their perspective of like, wow, like this place isn't just, this thing we've been imagining. Like, it's a real place with living things and it's beautiful. And so they get very like excited and share like a special moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then what you were saying about the robot, I really like that too. And I think that Sheeta interprets it like it's his job to protect the life on Laputa. And so it kind of shows that these robots, these creations, they're not intended to be violent unless life is threatened. And so that's what happens with the robot in the castle, is that Sheeta's life is threatened, and so it reacts to protect her. And so I kind of wonder if this same robot, the one, with the birds and everything, if he would react violently if someone was threatening the birds and the life on Laputa.
I think it's very interesting because I interpret it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's very interesting, but I just throw out a quick quote because I think I need to brought that up. So you mentioned about Pazu just feeling like they in the heaven because Laputa used to be just a dream for him. And I really like a quote he said when he first before he come to Laputa. He said like, beyond those clouds, it's an island we only dreamed of. So I think it's
Yeah.
very cool to just throw it in there. But yeah, back to the robots. So for me, I interpret it in a different way. But like you said, it might be just fight because people just threaten their owner, Shita. But for me, I feel like there are two different types of robots are invented in Laputa because Laputa people just divide into two sides. So for one side, they create the robots to take care of the nature they love. For the other side, people just create it, and I think those robots who Muska activate, they under the ground, like they
It's like military power.
yeah, they're just being hidden under Laputa castle. So I feel like it happened to become weapons that these people will use one day just to do what Muska do, to dominate the world.
Interesting.
So I think that's what happened when it's also recalled me of the lesson I learned in my social media and society class when we talk about AI.
Yeah.
So we watch a documentary. It's called Coded Bias. It's talking about AI bias based on human beings' interpretation about things. So human beings originally biased. So we used to be like categorize other people into different groups.
Yeah.
So that's why races come from. So for this one, I just feel like people will code the algorithms and then use the data collected from their own beliefs and knowledge to invent the technologies that can help them to accomplish their purpose. So that's what happened when the robot Muska activate is not the same robot with Sheeta at the beginning. So yeah, that's what I interpret.
I like that interpretation because it does make sense, because Sheeta and Muska are both descendants, and so it kind of does show this divide that the society was having. And Pazu even asked, I believe it's Pazu, when they get there, I wonder what happened here. This used to be such a powerful, advanced society, and maybe the answer lies in your interpretation, is that we had maybe perhaps a civil war, just this ideological divide among the citizens. I could see that. So yeah, I like that. And I think either way, either interpretation, what we're seeing here is that Laputa has been overrun by nature, and there's seemingly no humans that inhabit it anymore. And so we kind of do see that at the end of the day, if humans are going to exploit and do these evil things, that we stand no chance. Nature will win because we will ultimately destroy ourselves. Because Muska kind of, he spells his own downfall, essentially, I would say, just through... honestly, all his actions just kind of accelerated to that last point. So
yeah, I think you're right because I see very clearly the concept of how nature healing and destroying are repeated, like what we discussed in Princess Mononoke. Like at the very ending of Princess Mononoke, the nature is destroyed by the fight, the battle, and then it just automatically, flourish again.
Also, the same thing with the what is it called? The spirit of the forest. Because he is shot, and he doesn't come back, but the forest still revives. So there's this kind of essence that it may not be the same, but it will be reborn in one way or another. So yeah, I like that. And then I also like, since we brought up Muska, we can maybe talk about bit briefly. His just disrespectful attitude towards the environment. There's a few instances. The one that I jotted down was whenever he's first entering kind of like the main core area. He's trying to get to like that keypad thing with the crystal. I don't know. And he's like, these filthy roots don't belong in this chamber. And then he's like, I'll have them burned. And it right there to me was just where I was like, okay, this character is very one-dimensional, and I kind of wish we had something a little more irredeemable like Lady Eboshi. But regardless, he's you can just tell that he is going to have a downfall just by his very like skewed and extreme ideological position. There's no wiggle room. There's no room for motivation. He had to die because I can't see him being rehabilitated or reformed at all.
Yeah, no, for real. For Lady Eboshi, she cut down the trees to support
Irontown.
yeah,
Yeah.
her town. And for Muska, he just like completely destroyed the trees because they just block his way.
Yeah.
So I feel like
one little small thing is it's so ironic that he's sitting there cussing about well, not cussing, but cursing and being mad about the filthy roots as he called them. But what ends up saving Pazu and Shida in the end after the spell of destruction? Those very same roots. They didn't save him though. So I just find that very ironic.
yeah, I see that too because Labuta overall it just built up like a big trees because you can see a lot of like big roots under it and just floating in the sky.
Yeah.
So I think it's very ironic.
Now that we're talking, it's like jogging my brain. So I feel like, this idea that it is really the foundation of that floating castle are those trees, especially that main big one. And so it's like when they arrive and they don't want to respect the culture and the heritage, which could also be described as roots metaphorically, when they don't want to like appreciate the roots, then the whole thing crumbles. So they're coming there for the wrong purposes. They're not appreciating the culture, the heritage of the civilization. So they're disregarding the roots, and that's why it ultimately fails.
Absolutely. I think it's right. And I think that's why the spell of destruction is being invented. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like that spell is invented just for the only purpose just to eliminate the rotten part of that
I like
building.
that. Yeah.
Just to like rebuild the new things. And I think this concept also repeat at the end of the movie when one of the pirate men in them just say like my gallon's wrecked, and then Dola just yell at him and say stop bubbling. I think so. What did I write?
Babbling?
Yeah, babbling. I don't know how to say, but
Okay.
we're going to be on better ship.
Yeah.
So I think it's something about like the reborn of the nature maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have to cut down some of the rotten part just
I
to
like that.
build up the new part. So yeah.
Absolutely. And, speaking of Muska and his death, because I guess we could say he was part of the rotted part that had to get cut away.
Yeah.
It kind of ties back into that theme of pacifism, because in this instance, it's very much violent. He falls to death or is crushed to death. It's a little ambiguous. But either way, you see that let me start over. Shida and Pazu, from the beginning of the film, they almost never choose violence. They just choose to evade. They keep running, So the reason I find this scene so interesting that Shida uses this spell of destruction and it spells the demise of Muska is because this is probably the first time she has taken an action that is whether directly or indirectly violent. And so to me that was important because I feel like total absolute pacifism does not work. I feel like the movie is kind of trying to tell you here that, yeah, you should try to choose nonviolence and peace, but to a certain extent, you have to make more bold decisions. And I feel like that's what Shida does here. She doesn't fire a gun at him. They had a gun, but she decides to basically self-destruct the whole place. And, they don't even know they're going to survive. She thinks that they're sacrificing their lives. So I just found that really striking with this pacifist theme.
Yeah, for real. I agree with that. I like that. Yeah. So, do you have any other thoughts on the environment in industrialization?
No, I don't think so. Did you write anything for pacifism or should we move on from both of those topics?
For for that, I think I just jotted out some of the violent scenes where I feel like they should have killed somebody, but they choose not to.
They should have killed somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, they just like shooting at the enemies, but
Yeah.
cause no harm.
It's interesting because the enemies will shoot directly at them. So like Sheeta gets her braids shot off. I think Pazu gets shot in the face. It might hit his glasses so it doesn't harm him. But hi. Oh.
Sorry, you were shot in the face? This is a Ghibli movie.
He was shot in the face.
Was it gory?
No, it like was off his goggles, I think. So he survived.
Okay. I was like,
We had to catch Sarah up. Who was shot in the face? Yeah, I think he was shot in the face. That's what I remember seeing. But yeah, no, absolutely. We see the villains being super aggressive and super violent. Especially the way that Muska handles Sheeta. He just drags her around like a doll, like throughout the movie. It's ridiculous. And I don't know. I do find it interesting. We kind of interpreted the robots differently, but for me, I did kind of see it as they won't attack unless life is threatened. But I do like your interpretation as well. But yeah, either way, and also Sheeta proves continuously that she's very much like aware and considerate of emotionally or physically harming people. She does not like. She has values. She has morals. Let's just say that. So, and oh, one more thing. When Pazu is given the gun by Dola, to me, that was pretty significant because that gave him a choice to use it or not. And how does he end up using it? To break through a wall to get a Sheeta. So.
Yeah, for real. He just used the gun just to open the way to go to Sheeta, not to like shoot Muska.
Absolutely. So do you want to maybe talk about their relationship, or did you have like individual things to say for their characters?
Yeah, I think we can move on that. We focus a lot on the environment, but yeah, we can talk about their relationship because I think like it started with a very pure friendship instead of the romance side. But yeah, for Pazu, what do you think about Pazu?
I wrote down some things about, well, in the terms of their relationship, because we could also just talk about him separately, but in terms of his relationship with Sheeta, he's such a gentleman, and he's also a little flirt. I don't think it's intentional. I don't think he's trying to flirt with her. I just think he's smooth. I just think he's charming. And we get a few examples, like he lets Sheeta sleep in his bed, and he sleeps on the floor. That was very respectful and considerate. And then he says to her, and he says it so seriously, like he's not trying to flirt, I don't think, but it sounds like he's flirting. He says, "The way you fell from the sky, I thought you were an angel." Like but I think he's saying it literally, but he sounds like such a flirt.
Oh my god. No, in the dub, it says so smoothly, but in the sub, it's kind of the same, but he just say like, "So you are human after all. I was afraid you were an angel."
That's interesting. Yeah, I think our quotes are different because you said something earlier about like behind that cloud is an island or something that we've only dreamed of. The quote I wrote down, and I think it's supposed to be the same quote, is behind that cloud is a floating city that no one believes exists. So he says it entirely differently. So yeah. Normally I feel like our quotes match up more. I don't know what it is about this movie, but we have difference in interpretations for language.
Mm-hmm. No, for this one, you remind me of the articles I just ran over during the research. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people say you should watch this movie in sub instead of a dub because the dub is just sucks. But
I did complain about Pazu's voice. He sounds like a middle-aged man. But yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So talking about Pazu, I feel the same as you. I feel like this man is just like a really sweet boy. A little bit goofy when he just like want to test the power of the stone. He just jump off the roof.
Oh yeah. I wrote that down too. I thought he's too trusting, and he really like just accepts his intuition because he does so many reckless things. Sometimes it works out. In this instance, it doesn't. So
I think it does for me
when he jumps off.
Yeah, because he broke the bricks, and it seemed not normal, and people might not die or break their arm or legs because of that, but he just safely. I don't know because it's the cartoon, so it worked that way, or because the stone did work at this time, just to basically save him from that goofy action.
I think that might have just been the cartoon. That's my interpretation. Just because the crystal didn't glow, and we kind of get this idea that only those that have like a certain blood, like Sheeta is an heir or ancestor, so she can use it. So I don't know. That's
Yeah.
just me. But I was thinking the same thing. I was like, how did he not die from that or break a leg? So
Yeah, for you. I don't know.
yeah, no, that's fair. If you want, maybe we could just talk a little bit about Pazu in depth. Cause what was your first impression of him?
I think he's a nice guy because he's very calm too. Because who doesn't freak out when you see a person just falling from the sky and glowing?
He almost
But
dropped her.
yeah, I don't know, but he's very sweet boy when he just save her and put her there and just cover it with his jacket.
Yeah.
And even though he was busy at work, like running around for the boss commands, he always looked up to see like if
Yeah.
she was okay. And I think it's very sweet boy at that moment when I first.
I think that's a wonderful first impression, is that
Yeah.
he's sweet. For me, that was probably the second thing I thought of. The first thing I thought of, and this happens in like just a lot of movies in general. Where are his parents? Why is he working? He looks like he's 13. What is going on? Where is his parents? So that is the first thing I thought of. And so I kind of got this idea like, is he mature? Has he had to grow up fast? Has something happened? And then we eventually find out that something has happened. It doesn't mention his mother, but we know he's an orphan. Because I think he says to Sheeta, like, we orphans should stick together, don't you
Yeah.
think? Right? So we don't know what happened to his mother, but his father, we do. It's a little ambiguous, but what did you take away from that? The thing with his father.
I think obviously I think he passed away from that moment when he took a photo of Labuta, maybe on the fight again, maybe. I don't know, but he passed on to his sons the passion of like flying in the sky and explore thing. And I think that's why Miyazaki just again imply his aviation.
Aviation.
Yeah, aviation dream in this movie. And yeah, that's what I think.
It
but-
would make sense because Miyazaki, it was his father that also had like this interest in planes, I believe, right?
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
so it makes sense that it would be a father-son dynamic in the film.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. I think that's fair.
Yeah, and so a quote I wrote down of him talking about this is, he says, being called a liar is what killed him. He says this about his dad, and immediately I just wrote down daddy issues. Because he obviously he wants vengeance for his dad, like to clear his name to a certain extent. I don't know if people were ridiculing him in the village or what. But we do get an idea. And so, like, Pazu's motivation is interesting because at first he seems to be motivated just by this idea that he wants to clear his father's name and prove that his father was right. But as the film progresses, we see his priorities shift from that to just, like, wanting to protect Sheeta and, be there with her and support her. And I think that's really lovely.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I like that. And another impressions I have about Pazu, I just feel like his development is very interesting for me because I think we're going to touch on that more when we discuss about gender. But there's a lot of scenes in the movie where people keep talking to him like, act like a man, be like a man.
I think Dola, doesn't she say at the end, like, oh, you're finally a man, when she gives him the gun, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know,
Interesting.
but
He's
I really
unfazed.
enjoy. Yeah.
He seems unfazed. He's doing his thing. But yeah. Oh, and what did you think about when they're going into the hurricane, Pazu and Sheeta, to see Laputa? You kind of see this flash, and he sees his dad. What was that about? I was like, was that supposed to be time travel or what? Or was that just his kind of hallucination, just like imagining his dad?
I'm trying to remember what scenes you are talking
So,
about.
whenever I think they're with the pirates at this time, and remember they fly straight into the hurricane to get to the castle.
Oh, yeah.
He sees like an image of his dad, and it disappears really quickly. So I didn't know if that was supposed to be metaphorical or if maybe there's some weird like magical thing going on. Maybe his dad got trapped there, Bermuda Triangle stuff. I don't know.
No, I like your interpretation about that. But for me, it's just like a deja vu thing, maybe
Could be.
because he look at the photo that his dad just took for a really long time, and he always dream up to reach there. So when you see something very similar to what you just see for a
Yeah.
long time, you just the image just like pop up in your mind. So I think that's why, but I don't know.
That would make so much sense. I get so caught up on this idea that Pazu says being called a liar is what killed him. So I have this theory. And it might not be right. Probably isn't right. But when it says being called a liar is what killed him, it kind of makes me think, did Pazu's father, okay, see the castle, come back down to the village and tell everyone, I saw it, and no one believed him. So maybe he felt the need to try to go again so he could take the picture, and maybe the storm killed him. I don't know. Or maybe he got trapped in the storm and it's some weird Bermuda Triangle thing. I don't know. I mean, I think what you said makes a lot more sense on a more character-driven level, because Miyazaki does kind of like to go into the psychology and the minds and emotions of the characters. So that makes sense to me, but I don't know. There could be something weird supernatural going on. I don't know.
I think I like that one because it remind me of the scene up the sky of Porco Rosso when they see like a lot of like dead planes
Yeah.
also from the sky. So I think yeah, it's maybe what you say, some metaphors in it too, but yeah.
Maybe it's, yeah, a mix of both. I just got so caught up on, like, how did a lie kill him? It kind of made me think that maybe his father tried to go back again to obtain that photo, and that led to his death somehow. I don't know, but
Yeah.
possibility.
Yeah. Because for me, I think like the lie killed him because like children, you very
Mm-hmm.
feeling like disappointed and annoyed when your parent being gossiped by other people about something they
Yeah.
did right. So I think it's just
Absolutely.
like his sense to do those things, but I don't know. It's very interesting to bring
Absolutely.
that up.
So for our next little topic, unless you have anything more for Pazu, do you want to talk more about Sheeta and Pazu's relationship, or maybe some character analysis for just Sheeta?
Yeah, I have one more thing because I want to
Yeah.
talk about the necklace. I think it's very
Yes.
interesting to brought up for their relationship because as you say, they have a lot of similarities. Like they both orphans. They they just want to come to Labuda even though they have different purpose to
Mm-hmm.
reach there. But the necklace is something like draw them together. And Shita once mentioned that the necklace was only worn in the wedding. And I want to
Oh.
romanticize this again for their first met. They met because of the necklace. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe gradually they will come together and become like the family, become each other homes, like what we
Yeah.
usually talk about. Like for example, in House Moving Castle, like two people just come together and build up their home.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I will say I do like that the film doesn't entirely focus on their romance just because of their ages. Because they're younger. But I do think that they share an incredible bond, and whether that is going to perhaps progress romantically or stay platonically, like either way, we know these characters really care for each other deeply. They care about each other's safety. That's why Sheeta makes the decision to work with Muska so that he will let Pazu go. And that's the reason Pazu decides to team up with the pirates to go get Sheeta. Like, they just keep making sacrifices for each other. So either way, they share a very close and, like, special bond.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like how you brought up House Moving Castle, because Sheeta goes through a similar hair transformation that Sophie does that I feel like says a lot about her character development.
Yes, I think so too. So, do you want to move on to that part? If you have any ideas to share
Sorry, which part?
about
Oh,
Sheeta's transformation, maybe?
sure. Yeah, so maybe we can talk about characterize Sheeta a little bit at the beginning.
Yeah, sure.
She's a little more shy and reserved at first, I would say. Like, we don't even actually hear her talk that much. Because for me, I realized that she was not talking a lot in the beginning of the film, because by the time I got to maybe the middle, maybe a little earlier, I started hearing her talk more, and I realized that the voice actress was doing a little accent. I don't know what kind of accent it was, but I didn't notice that before, which kind of just showed me that she was not talking a lot before. I think Pazu is more of the one that talks more in the relationship. So, but anyways, we do see that she's very brave. Like when she in the beginning is on the ledge of the ship right before she fell. But I think her backstory is very interesting. Her mom and dad died. She was just kind of living secluded in this village. So we can imagine that she doesn't have many friends or encounters with making friends, which is what makes her relationship with Pazu even more special. But that the men just kind of showed up and kidnapped her over something that she just thought was a family amulet, So to me, I feel like I see a lot in Sheeta of this theme of heritage and culture, and that especially with younger generations, that sometimes you can become disconnected from your background and your ancestral customs. And so like the way that her grandmother had taught her the spell rather than her mother kind of showed me that, like, you know, as each generation is going, they're getting further and further away from their culture of Laputan culture, or whatever
Yeah.
you'd like to call it. So I don't know, what did you think?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting when you tied Ashita's personality with culture because I don't see it here. Just I don't know. I just saw her like a very independent and stronger woman, maybe a younger version of Dola, which she also mentioned about that a couple of times. Like Shita just looked exactly like her when she was young. So I think it's very interesting, and like you just say, like we can see the bravery side of Shita, especially when she was with Pazu on the top of the ship when they have to go for the enemy's ship. So Dola just told Shita to get down because she is a girl. And
Yeah.
yeah, but she just respond like, "So are you? Besides, I'm a mountain girl with sharp eyes." So
You want to know what the dub says for
what
that?
is it?
But you're a female captain. I grew up in the mountainside. I can do this. It's just
Yeah,
funny the difference. But yeah, same idea. Do you want to talk about gender?
yeah, we can touch on that if you. Yeah, I don't know. It just for me, I focus more on the feminism of Shita,
Hmm.
but I just want to say like it's very interesting when you tie Shita with the culture side. So yeah.
I just saw it as a juxta. It's interesting because we see both because it's the, you know, gender, culture, and then her compared to Muska, who I could say would be her character foil. You see how they're so different. He's even more disconnected from the culture. He's indifferent. She at least has an interest in preserving it and, you know, being appropriate. You know, she's kind of more about woman power. He just treats her like a little girl, like she doesn't know anything, and pulls her around. She is compassionate and caring. He's heartless. So I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah. So, do you want to talk about gender then?
Yeah.
Because I only have a few things, but I feel like this movie similar to Porco Rosso when it's draw out a lot of like similarities. No, it's not similarity. About some stereotypes of gender.
Yeah.
So it's like the masculine and feminine element just portray very clearly. Maybe talking about a job, like minors. Whose girl is a minors? I was like, it's to me like minors are masculine jobs, and because it require a lot of strength, and you
Mhm.
also say like see like a lot of mechanical jobs like what Pazu do in the ship. It
Mhm.
just also related to the masculine aspect. And for the women, like always we see in the Ghibli movie, they belong to the kitchen. They just cooking.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's not something very new, but it just brought up again, like how I
Yeah.
talk about the masculine and the feminine job, like the pirate, Porco Rosso, and then some kind of artist side. I usually associate with females. So yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like when the pirates first realize that Sheeta's going to be enjoying them, they have two different reactions, or three different, I would say. Number one, they're excited because they think she's cute, so they're sexualizing her. Number two, they expect her to cook. Number three, they expect her to clean. It's like, is that all you see her as? And then at the end, I think I might be wrong. Don't they kind of like apologize for the way they treated her or something? So at least they do show like remorse, but we do know that despite the fact that their mother is a representation of a very strong, independent woman, they're very disrespectful to Sheeta initially, and sexist, frankly. But yeah,
Yeah, I agree with you. Sorry, I need to do something.
you're okay.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I think Miyazaki just did like as always he draw up like the comparison between the female and the male characters
Mhm.
for us the audience to draw a different interpretation about this like social issue I would say.
Mhm.
So I think it's very interesting for what you just say too.
Yeah, and I like that Miyazaki I feel like he handles like this historical context and these issues very well. Which this movie, it's kind of giving like a 19th century vibe. I mean, clearly they got child labor going on with Pazu working in the mines, because I'm assuming he's pretty young, just the way he looks compared to other characters.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, he handles I think he handles it pretty well, because he shows that, yeah, these stereotypes do exist and people do discriminate, but I'm going to show you how these characters can break those stereotypes, and I think Sheeta absolutely does. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, talking about gender, I also think of something like what I touched on a little bit about the difference between the man and the boy, because in this one, it not only focus on feminism, like how people view a woman and her duties, but also how the society view a man too. Like
Mhm.
the pressure the society just have on the man, or more basically a boy. Like, yeah, like I just say, the man was, for me, I think like the concept of what being a man, maybe you know what you want to do and what you want to fight for. So I don't know if it's right. We need a man here to
To ask
conform,
their
but
opinion.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I
For
mean, I agree. I think we see a lot of, I don't know about a lot. I think we see some toxic masculinity in here. The main scene I'm thinking of is the one where the pirate and what was he? It was the
it's the
boss, I guess.
boss,
I think
yeah.
his name is Duffy. I don't know. But they're literally like, so basically, Sheeta and Pazu are running away from the pirates. They go into the village. They go to the boss's house, Duffy and his wife. I wrote down her name. Let me see. Her name is Okami. I don't know. Hopefully I wrote that down correctly. Okami. But regardless, Okami's like, get inside, guys. And so the boss is like gonna handle it. And so you think this big fight is about to happen. No, they start flexing muscles. It becomes a muscle flexing competition. And to me, I just thought, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. And I think somebody says, make your shirt explode. It's just over the top.
No, it's very funny on that sense. And again, it's show a little bit detail about the feminism in this side when the woman, like, what's her name again?
Okami.
Okami just talked to her husband that I'm not going to mend your shirt.
Yeah, because she thinks they're being ridiculous, which they are. And so it kind of starts off with them just having like this pissing match, for lack of a better word, where they're flexing, and then it develops into violence. So I just thought this kind of showed this sub theme of not just gender, but also violence, like we were talking about earlier, that feelings of toxic masculinity can facilitate violence. And that is what happens here, is that it turns into an all-out brawl between
Mhm.
both parties.
Yeah. And it's similar to Porco Rosso again.
Yes. Like Curtis and Puerco when they're just boxing in the
Yeah,
water.
the boxing fight.
Yeah, it's just okay, so women will often resolve things through a discussion. Is it always a civil discussion? No. But these types of portrayals of men that we see in this, and I'm not saying all men, just the portrayals of these negative stereotypes of men and toxic masculinity, they often resort to violence over words to deal with things. And so we kind of see that there.
Yeah, true. Yeah, and I don't know. I think it's right for what you just said, because Pazu, who was a boy during that time, also tried to copy what the man do. He wanted to join the fight,
Yeah,
but
he's trying to buff up his chest.
Yeah,
And she's like, not you, get inside, Okami.
that's funny.
But
Yeah.
I like it because it kind of shows that there is this maybe societal expectation for Pazu to be brave and fight to protect his woman. But as the movie goes on, we see that that's not the kind of protection that Sheeta needs. She just needs someone to be there with her, and like help her go through this, because this is surely very traumatic for her.
Mhm.
And so even when he gets the gun and Dola's like, oh, you're a man now. Well, he doesn't end up using it for the purpose she thinks that he will use it for. So he's kind of breaking down, I think, gender roles for men as well. He doesn't have to respond with anger. He doesn't have to be violent to resolve things. So I'm proud of Pazu.
I love that. Yeah. So, do you have any other thing related to gender, maybe, to talk about this?
I think I said most of what I had written down. What about you?
I look back my note. Oh, I think there's one thing I want to touch on. The reason I want to explain why the reason I feel like Dola is just like a strict mother because the way she just treat the boy just the same as how she treat a girl because the kitchen again is not belong to man, and in the ship it's just them, so all of the housework, the cooking stuff, they did it all. So
Yeah.
I just recall the scene when Shita agreed to come with them. They were so happy because they don't have to do it anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But also it does show the sexism that they just expected that she would fulfill that role.
Mhm.
Although we do see also that there's that element in which they're all kind of being weird and I don't want to say sexualizing her because they're not necessarily making advances, but they are still being inappropriate because they all end up being in the kitchen to help her. They're not there for that reason. They're there because they want to be close to her. And it's kind of funny because the brothers start like getting mad that he's like, "Wait, what are you doing in here?" And then he looks around and they're all in there helping her cook.
No, that's very funny. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Goodness.
But yeah, I don't have any other thing to talk about gender, but I have one last topic to
Mhm.
touch on if you want to talk about that.
Yeah.
So I have a something to talk about home, which touch most of that when we discuss about Pazu and Shita relationship. But for me, home for Shita is a place for us to return and avoid a storm, right? It's for Shita's family side. And I say that because of maybe the magic that her grandma just taught her when she was young. It's just an old magic spell for troubles. It's say like help me rekindle the lights. And this blue magic light just helps Sita get back to Laputa.
Yeah.
And it's remind me of the blue light from House Moving
Yes,
Castle.
the
It's from
ring.
the ring. Yeah, it just also guide him back to his home, which is Sophie. So sweet. But yeah, I think it's very
Yeah.
interesting.
And Sophie's guided back to Howl and guided back to him in his childhood even. So
Yeah, so it's a very strong concept of home in here that I see.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And to me, that idea of home connects a lot with the culture that I was talking about that I feel like Sheeta does embody to a certain extent.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I brought that up is
Mhm.
also another thing I found is very interesting because it's opposite. So home is a place you return to avoid storm, but storm can also happen from the house. For
Yeah.
example, is the other side, Musca
Yeah.
side.
And Laputa is literally in the middle of the story.
Yeah. So yeah, like most of them, I mentioned a lot. Just they just want to dominate everything by their power, and yeah, Muscat just represent the government to look for Labuta, but he also secretly planned to fulfill his own sake, and that's what his family maybe do when they
Yeah.
invent some robots and hidden somewhere, the fighting robots, and yeah, I think this one is very interesting when it contracts it order because it's explained why the grandma taught Shita the bad incantations.
Mhm.
So like what I just said, maybe I can read a quote. So she said like the spells of destruction, the spells of power is what she taught me. She said I must know the bad words too, but I never used them. When I was taught, I couldn't sleep for fear, and it all had to do with the stone. It was hidden in the fireplace, except for at the weddings, never used. Mother and grandmother's grandmother, everyone feared it. I wish it never happened, like, and it never exists. So that's something I just feel like Shita feared that bad things come from her own family,
Mhm.
but in fact, you have to learn like the both good and bad sides to prevent that happen in the future, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's also tied back to the concept when I'm talking about you should like cut off the rotten sides, like the rotten part of the big things just to like make it right again.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Hmm.
it's just that.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you have any other comments?
I don't think so. If you want to touch on the word building, or we can just cover up with how would you grade it?
Yeah, so for world building, I mean, we do have a lot here, but for me, I just didn't write as much down, and I think it's because it's just so action packed that I was observing the world building, but not as much as I would in other films. So for me, something that I did write down that it's not necessarily world building, but I put it under there because I didn't know where else to put it. We continuously see this imagery of Ghibli food and how whenever characters come together to enjoy a meal, that usually that's a place where they're able to interact and really develop their relationship. And Miyazaki even talks about how he thinks that's very crucial. And I would say in the anime industry in general, like food and like sharing food with someone, it's usually very important for character development. And so we see that here when they're underground with Uncle Palm, the toast with an egg. Honestly, why did they make an egg on toast look so good? They made it look like a gourmet meal. But while they're under there, this is when they open up to each other, and Sheeta talks about her background and her the everything that we just talked about right now. This is when that conversation takes place. So I just wanted to touch on that because I thought the imagery in this, just honestly, the food looked so good. But yeah.
No, I love that. Just the meal is where the story began, and you get to know each other. So I think that's fair to brought
Yeah.
it up. And for the word building, I also don't have that much. I think I touched a lot about them while we discussing. So the only thing I just noticed, like as always, Miyazaki movie just makes his audience connect to many other reference, not necessary to be something very specific, but I did watch some cuts from YouTube where there's a group of guys just talking about how they feel is very related to a character from Minecraft. I don't play that.
Minecraft.
Yeah, they say like the
No
robot,
comment.
the robot. It just similar to the creature in Minecraft. It's called the Iron Golem. I don't know what.
Yeah. It's
but
because actually that is funny because that is a good comparison. Okay, my interpretation, right, that the robots won't fight unless they're provoked. That's literally what an iron golem. Have you played Minecraft?
I don't.
Okay, so sorry,
that's
I
why,
didn't
yeah.
want to over explain. So like iron golems, they do look like that, and they're the same way. They protect the villagers. You know, like how Minecraft says little villagers.
Mhm.
The iron golems protect the villagers. So if you attack a villager or if you attack the iron golem, they become aggressive, but otherwise they're peaceful. So it is kind of like how
Yeah,
we see
that's
the
very
robots.
interesting.
Yeah.
Did you just compare Minecraft to
She had seen a video where someone else does, and I was explaining it because she
I
hasn't
see.
played Minecraft.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to watch Castle in the Sky, guys, maybe you should brush up on your Minecraft lore. I don't know. Apparently, it's related.
Yeah, I don't know. They just say something about that very interesting, and I just want to brought it up. So
Yeah. So
yeah, that's very
other
funny.
than that, do you have any closing thoughts, and then we can do our little ratings?
Yes, I love the music.
Yeah.
I love it so much. And it was one of my favorite soundtrack, but I didn't remember until I rewatched this movie to like
Aw.
where it come from.
Mm-hmm.
So it's similar to House Moving Castle. It always give me a strong feelings when I listen to the song, and I use it for study too.
I
But
love that.
yeah, the first half of the soundtrack is seemed to me very dreamy and inspiring, like how you just begin a new adventure to Laputa.
Yeah.
And then it fit very well to the plot of the movie when they used the spell of destruction to destroy everything. So now everything just be in the memory, and the music
Mhm.
just like performs very well. So I really enjoy the
Yeah.
music. Yeah. Yeah, that's my final thought. So
All right. So what would you give the movie out of a 5?
I give it a 4 out of 5.
Mhm.
I think like the plot is very interesting for me. I love the music, I love the image in the movie, and I love the plot too. But for me, like what you say, for the first time I watched it, I don't found it very interesting. But for now, maybe because I'm interested in AI
Mhm.
and some technology, so I found it's very interesting. But for me, this movie have some aspect of a cartoon where you just set on the adventure and fight for some treasure hunt and some of like stuff like Disney where like you just brought
Yeah.
up. But yeah, it's just 4 out of 5.
Oh yeah. There's actually another movie by, is this Disney? I don't know. The Goonies. I don't know if you've seen that. No. Okay. Well, if anyone listening has seen that, Dola is the same. Dola and her sons are the same vibes as the villain in the Goonies. They're also like going after a group of kids because they want to get treasure. They're both like funny. I would say Dola and her family are a lot. They have better morals than the villains in Goonies does. But regardless, I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5 because for me, it's just it was good. It just wasn't as memorable or impactful compared to the other films so far. I would say I enjoyed it more than My Neighbor Totoro, which I actually think I rated higher. So I don't know. Maybe I'll have to reevaluate my rankings at some point. But I liked it.
Yeah.
Just not enough as the other ones.
No, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So, do you think maybe because of the dub you watch? Because for me, I feel it's
Yeah.
very interesting because for Pocoroso, everybody just enjoys so much, but I'm not because I watch in a dub, which is very unusual.
I mean,
So
that's fair, but I've been watching everything in the dub, and I really liked Porco Rosso, and I watched it in the dub. I think it's mainly just because the villains aren't complex, and I think that's boring. And the thing in Porco Rosso is that the American Curtis, which I guess could be the villain, he's not complex either. But to me, Porco Rosso is more about the psychology of the main character. He is his own villain, and he's very complex, and it's interesting. Like, you know what I'm saying? I feel like
Yeah.
he is his own villain. And this one, I just feel like I'm missing a little more like in-depth, like psychological discussion.
yeah,
So, I mean, we have very good themes here. They're very interesting, but I wanted maybe this story is not as character driven as other Ghibli films, in my opinion.
yeah. There's a lot of question about the characters' backgrounds. So
Yeah, and
that's
the
fair.
villains just fell flat for me. And
yeah.
yeah. But maybe I'll rewatch it in the sub and maybe I'll change my mind. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. I want to rewatch Pocoroso too because I feel like I should have more things to say in that movie, but yeah, maybe because of the dub. I don't know.
But hey, it's okay. And so those listening in, our next film will be The Wind Rises. And that will conclude our discussion of Miyazaki Ghibli specific works. So after that, we're going to talk about some Miyazaki works that are not associated with Ghibli. So this would include Nausicaa of the Wind and Valley, for example. And I can't remember the name of the other one. Do you remember? It's like Calestro.
I don't.
You guys will find out later. Unless you look it up. But yeah, so we're very excited to keep creating and watching more and exploring just Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli's wonderful works. So
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for watching. Or not watching. Yeah, watching
Or-
and
or
listening.
listening, yeah.
Watching and listening for today's episode. And we will see you next time.
take care. Bye.